And it was funny because that opening night we had, and it's the story that goes around. If you ever hear the stories of Zanzibar, everybody mentions it at this point. But we had like tigers and we had lions. We had all of this in cages. You know what I mean? Because the club was called Zanzibar. So they had them by the door as you come in. There's these lions and tigers in cages roaming around. You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was a crazy atmosphere.
Today's Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. Who are we speaking with?
Hippie Torrales is my name.
Start from the beginning. Where were you born and where'd you grow up?
I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then when I was 1 year old, we moved to New York City. Till I went to kindergarten in New York City. Then we moved to Jersey when I reached first grade. First grade, I went to school in Newark. And then from Newark, we moved after the first grade, second grade started in Jersey City. So I grew up in Jersey City till I was graduated 8th grade. Then after that, I went to the first year of high school at Ferris High School in Jersey City. Then after that, we moved back to Newark. And then I grew up in Newark for the last like 35 years. And then in 2003, moved to Florida. And then from Florida, I moved to South Carolina, which is where I currently live at.
Compare and contrast life in South Carolina versus Jersey.
It's more affordable. Let's put it that way. It's much more affordable. It's more, a little more laid back. You know, you don't have the, you know, one of the main things I learned moving down, even in Florida, is that the pace is a lot slower than up north. You know,
yes,
everybody up north is in a hurry, always trying to get things done, always going somewhere. You know, that was the pace up in up north, northeast.
And what brought you to South Carolina?
Well, what happened was I was living in Florida with my ex-wife, and I got divorced, and I was going to go back to Jersey, but then my brother and sister were here, and they were like, "Come on, spend some time with us for a little while before you go." So I came, I stayed with them for a little bit, and I've been here ever since. I enjoyed it. Sort of like, I can still now with the world being open through the internet and, and traveling anywhere you want to, you can DJ from anywhere. So I said, you know what? I can enjoy this here. I can work here.
I like it. I like it. Tell me about, as a kid, what kind of music did you hear around the house growing up?
Well, my house was mostly Latin, Spanish music. That was it. And then at some point, my father brought home the White Album by the Beatles. I didn't like it, so really didn't listen to it. But then after that, we really, I guess maybe just that generation, other than our parents' music that was available to us, like I didn't listen to radio at all. I didn't grow up listening to radio. For some reason, I just didn't. And what happened was, when we grew up in Jersey City, we used to have what we call sets. So basically a set was a house party. So, but we were all young. We were like 9 and 10 years old. And we were going to these house parties in the houses. And all you would hear is, the classic ballads and James Brown and things like that. But it was all body and soul, Thin Line Between Love and Hate, Natural High, all that kind of stuff was what we would play at the sets. So that's what I grew up on. So then when I was at almost 10, my father gave us the opportunity for me and my 2 sisters to get our first record, our own record. So one of my sisters got Sugar Sugar, because the Archies were really big at that time. So that was her song. My other sister got a song called Dizzy. My Head Is Spinning. That was her song. And I picked Marvin Gaye, Heard It Through the Grapevine. That was my first song that I bought. And I was hooked from that point on. I knew the kind of music that I liked from that point on.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was not rock and roll. It was none of that stuff. It was strictly soulful R&B, and I grew up with Latin music, so I enjoyed that also. But those are my roots. Those 2 are my roots.
Speaking of soulful, how would you define soulful house?
Soulful house to me is, there's a combination of them. There's the soulful house with good vocals, a well-written song, you know what I mean, with a great delivery. that's soulful house. But also on the other side, soulful house to me is like nice jazz chord progressions, nice instrumentals like that with some funky, keyboards or something like that. And then you also have the Afro influence also because of the Afro influence, because of the drums, the percussion, and all that. All that to me is soulful house. That's what I consider soulful house.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
In school, you used to run the grammar school sound systems. Tell us about that.
I did. When the school I went to was public school number 5 in Jersey City. And what happened was, once I was in, I guess 11, almost 12 years old, I started running the auditorium. We used to have a large auditorium, and every week we would have an auditorium. And basically what we did was we either watched a film, or we listened to some classical music, or we had some form of entertainment, whether it be a classroom doing a play, or if we had a magician come in or anything like that. And I was in charge of the auditorium, so I would run the turntable. We had one turntable in there, and then I would also run the projectors. We would have the projectors. We had a stage, so we would run the lighting on the stage, the curtains, pulling the curtains and all that kind of stuff. That's what we did, along with some other people. I was in charge of that. Wow. And that's how I learned the technical side of wanting to work with electronics and audio and that kind of stuff.
And then tell us about your transition to the first nightclub you went to.
Yes, after on my 8th grade graduation. Before this, I've never gone to a club. Like I said, it was all house parties. But we had a local club called El Centro in Jersey City, and what happened was, like most clubs, they give a night of the year once the kids graduate. They give them a night so they can come and enjoy the club. So what happened? It just happened to be our graduation, and they allowed us in. So that was the first time I went to a club on my 8th grade graduation, and that was the first time I also heard continuous music, because before that, like I said, I didn't listen to radio, and I didn't have to turntable or anything. So I had no conception of what listening to a blend of music was, and that just blew me away. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. How are they doing this? A friend of mine just happened to know the DJ, so he said, listen, I know the DJ. His name is Angel, so I can bring you over to meet him. So he brought me into the DJ booth, and then Angel showed me the equipment, the basics, the 2 turntables, the controller they had at the time. He said, yeah, this is what I do. So I got hooked at that point. I was like, oh, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. Just play music, what I mean, for people.
Wow. So that's what sparked it. Now, did you discover that first, or did you discover club music first? Or was there even club music at that time?
Oh, yeah. No, that's when I discovered club music. Because we would listen to, like I said, James Brown, and we would listen to, like, we heard funky Nassau, stuff like that would be played on the street, so we would hear it. But the first time I heard So Makusa and Love Is the Message and all that stuff was in a club, or Just Begun. I was like, oh my God, this music is amazing. So yeah, there was actually club music at that point. Yeah. And
then you had a sound system back in the day as well.
Well, I didn't have a sound system. What happened was, when I moved to Newark, we had some local mobile jocks that would come around the neighborhoods and do their things outdoors, just for free. So there was this guy named Nelson Bucci Nieves, which had a sound system, and he came around the block, and, I was transfixed and trying to get to DJing. So I would bother him every time he came and tell him, man, let me play. This is what I want to do. I love play. And he would just shush me away. You know what I mean? He thought I was just bothering him. He was like, go away, kid. But then finally what happened was, after asking him many times, I think he realized we had the click, because what happened was I had 3 sisters, and then me and my sisters would hang out together, and we would have a crowd of people always hanging with us. Like we would bring like 20 or 30 kids that just wanted to hang out with us. So he said, you know what, I'm going to give this kid a shot. So he gave me a shot, and, I was horrible, but my friends were all like, yeah, go ahead, like your friends would do. So he said, you know what, okay, you can work with me. And from that point on, I started DJing with him. And we didn't have a name then, but he said, let's come up with a name. So we came up with Traveling Disco Sounds. So that was the name of our mobile setup.
I love the name. And then you also started the disco nights at Branch Brook roller skating rink.
Well, I didn't start. Butchie started him, and then I started playing with him. That's what happened.
Okay.
But after we did that, then we started hooking up with Mark IV Disco, which was another mobile setup in Newark, and we started doing, because they used to rent out the huge Ebony Manor, which was a huge ballroom kind of place in Newark. And they brought us in, and we started doing those parties with them. So what happened, that exposed me to a really large crowd within an area, and it was like 95% African American. So we seemed to click, me and the audience, because that's, like I said, I love soulful music. So we just sort of clicked at that point, and and I found my audience. This is what I like to play. So, and they accepted me, so that was great.
Tell people about the distinction, or is there a distinction between playing in a roller skating ring versus playing in a club? Do you approach
absolutely. In a roller skating ring, you would play, and you got to play, but people would be basically, dancing to the music on the, whether it be roller skating or ice skating, but it wasn't the same. You know what I mean? In the club atmosphere, you have people on the floor, and you're able to see the audience, movement, and you control that movement. In a roller skating ring, you're really not controlling it, and you just play music, and playing the next song so they can continue doing the roller skating. But there's no really blending per se, or the same thing as in a club or in a club atmosphere.
And then, so that's you as a DJ. At that same time, were you also going out to clubs? And if so, what clubs were you going out to back then?
Yeah, back then, but we were going to a club called Omega, which later on became Starship Discovery. We were going to Hollywood, which is where I met Richie Kaiser, which later became the DJ for Studio 54. He was the DJ for Studio 54. He also taught me my first lesson with the Felts, because I didn't even know how records. I went to the booth and I'm like, yo, how are you doing this? So he had the turntable. They had the turntable floating on they had chains back then, and then they had a platform. They would have the turntable on there, and just so the vibration and the dancing from the floor wouldn't affect it, they had it on chains that was, you can swing the turntable in and out, you know what I mean? And they were on this sort of like, ride, so they wouldn't be affected by the vibration. And he showed me the felts. He said, listen, I've got these felts, because I was like, how are you able to, because he used to do what we call slip cue. I call it banging. Basically, it's 1, 2, 3, bang in the next record, no mixing, no long, sequence of anything, just banging in the next song. And he did it excellently. So he told me, this is how I do it. He showed me, he said, look, I've got these are felts. They're underneath the records. What I do when the record comes, I grab it, I cue it up the beginning, and then he let me hear it on the headphones. He said, when you hear that, I hold it there, I stop it, and then when I'm ready to go, I pop it, turn it on, and when I'm ready to go, I slip it in, I just turn off the volume to the other one. That's it. I bring one up, bring the other one right out. No mixing.
Wow. That's an incredible lesson at a young age.
Oh yeah. And from Richie Kaiser, we're talking about the guy that was the DJ at Studio 54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. What happened next?
After that, like I said, we were playing a lot with Mark IV Disco, and we did a local community place called La Casa de Don Pedro. So we started doing a steady night there. And at that point, what you realize and say, you know what, we should probably open up our own club. So we started looking for our own place. And then in 1976, we opened up Docks in Newark, downtown Newark. That was our first club. That was my home club. So I was able to, do whatever I wanted there. And I experimented and did all kinds of things. And that's how I honed my craft in that club, that actual club.
Let's go deep on that. Tell people, I want to double click on that in many layers. One is, how'd you come up with the name? The process of opening up a nightclub, the pros and cons and challenges of that. Was it 5 days a week, 7 days a week, one night a week? How did you handle like liquor licenses, crowd control? Like, talk to us about the business of opening and managing a nightclub.
Well, for some reason, because of the way Mancuso started the Loft, which was basically a house party, any club that opened it in that setting weren't really concerned about liquor, because they didn't have liquor there. So the gallery opened, they didn't have liquor. We opened, we didn't have liquor. So our theme was more to be a party, an actual party atmosphere, and not worry about making money at the liquor. We just make money at the door. and that's it. You know, we might sell soft drinks, sodas and stuff like that, but no liquor. So that was the first step. The second step was security wise, we only had one person with us, and it's just somebody that worked with us, because the reality is most of those clubs, there was never a fight. I can't even remember any fights happening, because back then when people went to clubs, they went to party. You didn't go to a club like now. You didn't go to drink. You didn't go to get picked up. You didn't go to try to check somebody out. No, you went straight to get on your dance floor, find your spot, and do your thing. You know what I mean? Sweat your night out and work yourself out to whatever you needed to do. But everybody would find their spot on the floor and be dancing all night. That's what they did back then. So we didn't worry. We didn't have to worry about security on that end. The other thing was we were open 4 nights a week. You know what I mean? And when we first started, it was really, you know, it was a starting process. It was really slow. We would get people in, but what happened was our first audience that we had in the club was mostly like white and Latino kind of audience. And I don't know if it was because it's sort of like that, you know, what do you call the club in Harlem? Cotton Club. It was sort of like a cotton club attitude, I guess, to them, because it was downtown Newark, which they know is mostly African American, and there was this club that was pumping, and they would come out from everywhere and just want to be in there. So we had that at the beginning, but then, you know, we were trying to get, you know, I wanted to get the African American crowd, and so we started talking to Al Murphy, which used to be a big promoter, a big for gay events in Newark. He would do all the events, all the fashion shows, and he had a club called the Jocks for a while. So we talked to him and we brought him in, and then we started a Wednesday night. And that's when it really took off. Because when we started the Wednesday night, that's when we had our gay nights on Wednesday nights. And it was mostly, you know, like 95% African-American, but it was like 70% gay, 30% straight, but it took off. It was once we opened opening night, it was a success from that point on. You know, we didn't have to work at it. We didn't have to promote it. We didn't have to do anything. As soon as the moment we opened that night, it was a bang hit right from the start.
Wow. And what time frame was this?
We're talking that opened, and we opened the Wednesday night in 77.
In 77. And how long had it been open before the Wednesday nights took off?
About a year, because we opened in 76, and then by September of the next year is when we opened Wednesday nights. Yeah.
And how did you find the venue, and how did that all come to pass?
Well, Butchie went looking for places. We saw a couple of places, but the rent was too high. And then finally what happened was, apparently there used to be a club there before we had it, like a little kind of bar kind of thing. And it had, the reason why we came up with the name Docs was because it had the old coil, the tables that you wrap coils in, the big coils that they use. So it's got a thing. So they were like tables, they were actual tables. And it looked like, you know, these big tables, but they were, you know, those kind of thing you could find in a dock. Mm-hmm. So we said, no, but let's call it Docs, because it fits with what's happening in this room. And that's how we came up with the name. But like I said, he searched, and he was the one that actually found the club, Butchie. Yeah.
And Wednesday nights was the night to go? That was the poppin' night?
Yep, Wednesday nights. And then after we did Wednesday night, we started a Sunday night, and then it started popping on Wednesday and Sunday. We still had the Friday and Saturday with more different crowd, but our Wednesdays and our Sunday nights with the African American crowds. So those were our popping nights. Those were the most popular nights we had.
Got it. And then tell us about the music programming. What would you play? How would you play? And how would you peak the night?
Right. What we used to do is back then we used to, it was all considered club music, but we would play a little bit of everything. But what we would do is we would work our way up to a peak. In other words, we wouldn't start at 120 and just stay there all night or anything like that. We would start at, like, 90 beats, you know what I mean? Like maybe, I don't know, It Ain't No Big Thing Yet You're Leaving, or, things like that. We would start down tempo and then start building our way up, eventually, and building up and building up. And after an hour and a half, I would be at, over and over Sylvester. That would be like a peak record. And bam, once I hit that top spot, I would let the music die completely, and I could start up all over again. And the people just loved it. They would applaud, they would appreciate it, and they loved the build up. That's the way we used to build it up back then.
So how many times would you peak the night?
I would say about Probably about 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so people were losing their mind.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, our club, the club we had would be is maxed out at about 300 people, and we would get like 450 people in the place. It would be packed. It would be so packed that we had mirrors on the walls to our thing. The
Mhm.
mirrors would sweat. Every mirror in the place was sweating, just from
Wow.
people not leaving the dance floor, finding their spot and partying all night.
Wow. Do you have any footage, like video footage of that era anywhere, like a news
I
program?
don't think we have any video footage, but I know Butchie has a lot of pictures, and that's another thing. He always, I've always tried to hook up with him, but he moved to Puerto Rico, so I'm like, I really want to get access to all these old pictures and put them together. You know what I mean? That would be great, because he's got a lot of them, a lot of pictures from our era there.
I love to, when you do, I'd love to help you with that project. I
But
think
yeah,
if we don't tell our history, nobody will.
right, exactly, yeah. That's the only thing I feel bad about, because nobody really recorded. We didn't have cameras back then or any of that stuff. So nobody really thought about, is this even worth recording, honestly? Because we were just living for the moment, for that moment. That was it.
And then did you have guest DJs, or were you guys the only ones?
Well, I used to have guest DJs every once in a while. I would bring somebody in, you know what I mean, to do guest spots. But the DJs I brought in a lot of time were like, I think one of we gave Naeem his first shot as a guest DJ.
Oh, wow.
Camacho, we gave him his first shot as a guest DJ.
Wow.
They were both students of mine. They used to come to Docs and just listen and learn everything that I was doing and listening to it. And like they'll tell you themselves, this is my mentor. We learned from him. So they always used to tell everybody that I was their mentor, but they were always there. They were always listening and learning and asking the questions and doing what they got to do to learn what it is they were doing. So we have people like that. And then I had some friends of mine, like, Joey Palmentary, Mike McKnight. These were all older guys in my age range. And I would have people like that, guest spots and stuff. But none of the names. We didn't have, I didn't have anybody like, Levan or Knuckle,
Yeah.
nobody like that. It was just people from Jersey that I knew.
Got it. And how long did that party last? The club
lasted from 76 to, I believe it was 80. I want to say I went to about 10 years from 76. No, 76 to 86. Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
That's a good run, because most clubs last about 3 years. So that's a really good run.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Zanzibar did the same thing. It lasted well into like almost 12 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then why did it close?
What happened was the owners decided, because they weren't getting that many people in, for the regular house nights. So they just started to do hip hop. Once they went to hip hop, forget about it. Not only did they lose it, they had trouble, they had fights, they had all kinds of stuff. And after that, nobody wanted to go back. It was like, you know what? We're not going back for this. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then while you were at Docs, was that your full-time gig, or did you have like a straight job and then you did this for fun?
No, I only started working later on in life. All my life I was DJing. I DJed up until, I would say, honestly, till I was about almost 37, 38 years old.
Wow.
And that's all I did was DJ. Yeah. Yeah. But I did it. I mean, used to work, once I was really working, I would work 2-3 days a week, you know what I mean? Or sometimes when we had like Docs 4 nights a week. Plus I did a club in New York, so it would be 5 nights a week. So, I mean, you constantly work. Back then, we didn't have time. It wasn't like we had, a lot of people ask me, oh, how was so-and-so and so. We didn't have time. I didn't go listen to other jocks. I never heard, Nicky Ciano play. I've never heard T. Scott play at Better Days. I never heard any of those jocks because I was working the same time they were. So we were constantly in the club. I didn't have that. You know what I mean? And I think that helped me not, like you were saying about listening to somebody and sounding like them, you know what I mean? I think that gave me the advantage that since I never listened to any of them, I can create my own style and bring my own flavor to it.
Right. You weren't biased by it.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually a very good point, because whether we're conscious of it or not, we are influenced by what we're surrounded by, either positively or negatively, consciously or subconsciously. So
absolutely. I agree with that. Yep.
Wow. you talked about in the past how docks to Jersey was the equivalent of buttermilk bottoms or better days.
Better days, yeah, buttermilk bottom, yeah, exactly. Because that was when once we opened our night there, it was the premier club. Everybody in Jersey that went to, Better Days or to the garage or anything, their off night was at our club. So we were the equivalent of where they can come to when they didn't go to the garage. Like they would go up to the garage on the weekend, but Thursday and Sunday nights, they were at our club. You know what I mean?
That's fantastic. And then talk to us about after docks, what did you do next?
Well, after Docs, what happened was about 77, I started working at Abe's Disco.
Tell people what that is and where that is.
That was at the Lincoln Motel, and that was the downstairs club for the motel. And that was the pre-run before Zanzibar, because Zanzibar was the same building, the same club. They were just the second floor later on. But that's where I worked for about almost a year and a half before they opened Zanzibar. I was doing that. And I was also playing in a club in New York called the Limelight, but the original one, not the one that was in the church. The original Limelight used to be on 7th Avenue and 9th Street. And it was, I used to do a weeknight there, and it was also a gay club and stuff, but it would get packed. And, it had a Alex Rosner sound system. So it had a good sound system, and the floor was sunken in. It was kind of a sunken in floor. It was really nice layout and Tiffany lights and stuff like that. It was really nice, Tiffany lamps. So I used to do that. And then while I was working at Abe's, I was still working at Doc's also. And then what happened was Miles decided he wanted to do something with the upstairs, because Gerald T had spoken to him and told him, listen, you're making some nice change here, but you have the upstairs ballroom, which he used to rent out for weddings or events or anything like that. He said, if you turn it into a club, you can really make some money. So he thought about it. He said, okay, yeah, that might be something good. So it just so happened that Richard Long, with the sound man that did the sound for, Paradise Garage, Studio 54, all that kind of stuff, also did the sound for us. He did the sound system at Abe's, our downstairs club. So Richard told him, listen, I got a club in New York I want to take you to, so you can get an idea of what we can do with the upstairs. So he took him to the garage, and Miles just fell in love with it. He said, oh, I want to bring this to Jersey. So when he came back, he was like, okay, we're going to do this. So he had Richard Long do the sound system, Design Circuit do the light show. I mean, he spent the dollar. I mean, the sound system upstairs was, it was subpar. You know what I mean? It was really excellent for the side of the room. You know what I mean? It was excellent. And the light show, the light show was amazing. It had every kind of possible light that you can think of. And that's what I did. And that's what happened was opening night, Miles said, he tapped me and said, look, you're going to be the DJ opening night. So I opened up Zanzibar opening night.
Wow.
Memorial Day weekend, I believe it was, I don't know if it was the 30th, I believe it's the 31st. 31st, a Friday of
what year was this? 1979?
Yeah, 1979.
Oh, wow. Yep. Wow.
Yeah. And it was funny because that opening night we had, and it's the story that goes around. If you ever hear the stories of Zanzibar, everybody mentions it at this point. But we had like tigers and we had lions. We had all of this in cages. You know what I mean? Because the club was called Zanzibar. So they had them by the door as you come in. There's these lions and tigers in cages roaming around. You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was a crazy atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
There's got to be footage of that somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I believe NBC News was covering it. So I've been trying to find it, but I can't. For some reason, I can't go back that far. I can't find it. But we did have NBC News came in and they filmed and stuff and took film on it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did they come up with the name Zanzibar? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know who mentioned it to him or how they came up with it. I honestly don't know. I do know that that once they had it, they really went out. Like they actually hired a promotion, company to promote the whole event. I mean, they had it, blasting everywhere on radio. I mean, everywhere you can think of. I mean, it drew out everybody. The Kool and the Gang was hanging out in the DJ booth. Tasha Thomas, you know what I mean? Joe Robinson came in from Sugar Hill Records and said to us, listen, I have this record that hasn't been played in the New York area at all. The only time we played it was like a week ago in Texas. So it's never been played here. You know, we would like you to play it. So he gave us the record, we listened to it, popped it on, and that's how we broke Rapper's Delight for the New York area. Yeah, that's what we broke. Yeah.
Wow.
All on opening night. This is all opening night.
Wow. We gotta find footage of this. This must have been crazy. What was it like to be the opening night DJ? I mean, it must have been crazy that night.
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, the lines we just went out the building and around the building. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, you know, we've had clubs, but I can't even think. The only other club I can think of that actually had those kind of lines, obviously the Paradise Garage, but before the Paradise Garage was Starship Discovery. Starship Discovery had lines going down the block when it opened also. So me as DJ, I never really played in those kind of big places. That was my first one. So I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is amazing. You know, and then when we opened up, we had the downstairs open first. So we kept the downstairs open till we got enough people. We were packed in that we said, all right, now we can open the second floor. So around 11:30, we opened up the second floor. I was upstairs. So I start playing and people start pouring in. And then they just poured in and poured in and poured in. And it was just jam packed. From the beginning, like just like we did with Docs, Zanzibar was the exact same way. It was packed from the very first day we opened the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is your intention when you DJ?
I really do want to entertain people, but I also want to be creative. So I believe I believe when you play a song, what differentiates me from the next jock or whoever else might play it is how I work the song. It's the equivalent of, you know, 3 sax players playing the same song, but they all play with their own flavor. They add their own, you know, different little notes, their own thing. That's the same thing for me with DJs. You know, we may play the same records, but I'll try to play it differently from somebody else, and I'll try to play it in a way that's entertaining for the audience. That's the first thing. The second thing is I also try to bring music in that will open their mind a bit, expand a bit. So I'll try to throw in new music that they can get into. A lesson I learned from Larry Levan was Larry, when he used to play at the garage, he sometimes he would play a record like 6 to 8 times in one night. And he told me the reason why it being is because it's like being in school. Nobody wants to learn something new. So, you know, the first time they hear a record, they're like, you know, what is this? They're probably not even paying attention to it. He said, but by the time I play it the 4th or 5th time, they know it's my record. You know what I mean? By the 6th time, they're screaming at it. You know, they really know the song. So that's why he would work a song. It wasn't like you play the song like one time and it's a hit. No, it doesn't work like that. He actually worked to make it a hit in his club. He would work it that night and just play it and play it. So I would try to do that. I would try to play the song, you know what I mean? I didn't like playing them a lot of times, but I would play it enough. I said, okay, I'm gonna play it in an early set. I'll play it at a peak time, and then I'll play it at the end of the night also, just to let them know that this song is something new that I like. So I used to do that. And then we used to, I don't know if it was consciously or unconsciously, we used to do a musical journey for the audience. So I would be playing a record and the song might be a love song. So I'll find another love song and throw it in. And then that song might lead to another song that's a breakup. You know, so we're telling a story through the music, unconsciously or consciously, and the audience is getting it and they're coming along for the ride. So they used to appreciate that and they used to enjoy it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So many different directions to go in. How did you meet Larry Levan?
Larry, the first time I met Larry was because we had, Judy used to have the record pool in New York called For the Record, and Larry was one of her DJs. And we used to have, George Rodriguez used to have a pool in Jersey called Garden State Record Pool. So we started doing parties together on off nights, industry nights, it's like on a Monday night. So the first time I met Larry was because of a party that Judy was doing, and she invited all our record pool to go to it. And I went to the club and I met him. And that was the first time. And then when I would go to the club, every once in a while I would go, Dave DePino already knew me. He knew that I played in Zanzibar and Jersey and stuff. So he would let me in. I would say hi to Larry. And, we were sort of like casual friends. We didn't really hang out. And then what happened was once we opened up, I'm sorry, correction. It was Zanzibar wasn't even open up yet when I first started going to see Larry. But once we opened up Zanzibar, what happened was Al Murphy, like I said, the guy that we brought in to do docs, he wasn't working with us in Zanzibar, but I wanted him to because I knew he could bring in a gay crowd for like a Wednesday night, like we used to do it at docs. So finally, after about 3 months, Miles gave him in and said, okay, fine, let's try this. So he brought in Al and he said, okay, I'm gonna let you start a Wednesday night, and you can manage that night. And so Al said, okay, if I'm gonna do it, I want to bring in Larry Levan to be the DJ for Wednesday nights. Now, what happened was Larry was under contract to Paradise Garage, so they didn't let him play anywhere else. But they allowed him to do the Jersey thing because it was on a Wednesday night and it was away from New York City. So opening night for Wednesday nights, Larry was going to play. Because Larry was going to play, we got more and more closer because I was a DJ on the weekend. So before the night opened and all kinds of stuff, we started hanging out like a week and a half before. So he came to Jersey. I took him to get a haircut. We used to have a store called Bamberger's, and they had a salon in there. We took him in there. He got his haircut. And then he invited me, and I went back to his house and started hanging out in his house with him. We spent all night talking music, he had a nice apartment that they had him in. And then he said, one time he said, well, before we did anything, he was like, hey, you want to go watch a movie? I said, yeah, sure. Why not? So he called up a friend. So he said, all right, we're going to go see the movie. And his friend comes with a limousine. So he had that's the kind of juice he had, yeah, I want to go to movies. So he called up a friend, there's a large limousine waiting for us outside. And, and I get in the limousine with him, we go, and he just goes. And, that was Larry. Larry was, bigger than life character. And that's how I met him. And we became pretty good friends. You know what I mean? We still both worked a lot, so we didn't really get to see each other. But, we respected each other. I learned a lot from just talking to him. We used to have conversations. So I learned a lot from him through there.
Wow. And so you used to go to the garage periodically.
I would go on, like I said, industry nights, like the off nights, you know what I mean? And every once in a while, maybe if I closed down early enough, I would go to the garage, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Describe the garage experience.
The garage was, how can I put it? It was the perfect, I would say, setting for what they were doing at that point, because it not only did it have an amazing sound system and a huge dance floor, but Larry was allowed to be what Larry wanted to be. Before that, DJs played, but there was always a connection between the DJ and the managers wanting them to play. Like, you couldn't really play everything you wanted unless it was like somebody like Mancuso or Nicky Siano, because his brother owned the club. But in general, most places, most bars where DJs played at, there was a balance. You know what I mean? You could play, but there was a balance. You knew maybe there's certain stuff you don't want to play. Maybe it didn't work there. But Larry can do whatever he wanted and play whatever he wanted. So it was a perfect setting for him, because he would challenge the audiences. So he would be playing, and sometimes he'd just throw some crazy stuff, and people were like, "What's going on? What is Larry doing?" But by the end of the song, they were all into it, and they were screaming and hollering and appreciate, because they couldn't see his vision. But once eventually he went in through it and he came out at the other end, they appreciated the fact that he brought them on this journey. And that's one thing I can say about Larry. Larry, without a doubt, was one of the first most influential DJs for audience control that I've ever seen. Everybody else DJed. There was a lot of great DJs, but the interaction between the DJ and the dance floor was sort of like, it was almost like a distant thing. Larry actually was involved with the audience, so they felt as though they were being, spoken through the music by him. You know what I mean? He would go directly in there, and he would go down to the dance floor and listen to the sound system and everything. He would do this, and they appreciated him for it, because he would try to bring different stuff, do different things. try different things, and it worked for him. For him, it created a sort of Masonic sort of situation. You know what I mean? Like he was up above them. You know what I mean? Giving them music and giving them what he felt, they should listen to, and they loved it. They loved every minute of it.
Talk to us about being a DJ. What's your safety record where the crowd's not really feeling it? You're like, oh, I'll put this on and I'm gonna get all of them. What's that record for you?
I don't know if I have that because I've been pretty lucky. But what I'll do is, I honestly think sometimes I think we overthink about how an audience wants to dance. If an audience comes to dance at a club, they came because they came for that purpose. If you get somebody that's going to a club not to dance, they're really not going to dance most of the time. They're just not. They're going to go to the bar, they're going to hang out, they're going to have their drinks. But the people that came to dance will dance through anything. You know what I mean? Because they're dancers. That's what they have within them. They come here and they're like, oh, I want to do my thing, and they'll get on the dance floor and they'll dance. So, I mean, every once in a while you may run into a situation where you play something and you're like, oh, I don't think they're really feeling it. But like Larry, I realized, a lot of the better jocks, what they do is they let the record play, because eventually it wins the crowd over. If it's a good record, it will win the crowd over. So in general, you shouldn't have that situation unless you've thrown out such a bad record that you didn't realize was bad. And that only happens most of the time is either if you get a record from, some record companies back then that came in and said, oh, I got this record, man, you got to play. And you just listen to the intro and it sounded pretty good with the drums. But then when you let the record play in the middle, it's a whacked record. Then you realize, oh man, this is not working. And you're quickly switching it to another record that you want to play. But in general, most DJs have listened to their music. They've listened to the songs and they know that the songs are good, because we have a built-in instinct to what works for us. Most DJs do have that built-in instinct. Like I'll get over 100 songs weekly. I still do. And I'll listen to them like, a couple of seconds. Nope, this is not going to work for me. I don't have to listen to the whole song. But if I listen to enough and I hear something that catches me right from the beginning, okay, then I'll jump to the middle and see what that's doing. I'll jump to the end and see how it's going on there. I know that record works for me. But if I listen to the first couple of bars and already not doing anything for me, I don't even bother with the rest. And I really don't. You know what I mean? It's just that I guess after all the time you're listening to music, and you begin to get an ear for what works and what doesn't work pretty fast.
Speaking of DJing, describe the feeling when you have the crowd in the palm of your hands.
Oh yeah, it crowd control of an audience from the DJ booth it really is like a church setting. You really feel like you're having this experience with them. You know what I mean? Because and the thing about it is, if you're really good at what you do, I used to have friends in the booth hanging out, and they would just be in awe because of the audience, what they were doing and how they were reacting. And I would tell them, listen, watch what I'm going to do now. And I would do something. I said, watch their reaction. And I know they would react because you have that connection with the audience so well that, y'all throw something and bang, and then suddenly they're, ooh, and they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. I said, I'm telling you, this is like a connection between you and the audience that cannot be beaten. It's like an artist on stage. You have a connection with the audience that you can't get anywhere else. It's a totally, I couldn't explain how it is, but it's a feeling that you know that you're in control of your settings and the whole room that you're working. That's a power that, most people don't feel. So imagine, you're in a place and you're playing music and you're watching thousands of people dancing and moving to what you're doing. And suddenly you're like, okay, let me switch this and see what happens. And you switch a record and the whole room just screams and hollers at the same time. Woo! You don't get that anywhere else. You get that when you DJ and you do the right thing in your job. You're going to get that response. Or in the concert, people do it too, with artists, because artists know that. They do their program, they do their music, they practice and they rehearse. But once they're doing it live, there's things they will do in the moment that they did not practice, but bring a response from the audience that they're like, wow, that's amazing. You know what I mean? I'm glad I tried that. That's the same feeling with a DJ. You get that feeling. It's sort of like, it's really almost euphoric. You really feel like a high. You're on a natural high.
The era of Docks and Zanzibar and Paradise Garage was the era of DJ residencies. Most of those have gone away.
Mhm.
How important is a DJ residency in establishing one's name, brand, and or career?
It's very important. I mean, you still need it. I mean, there's jocks that, now are trying to establish themselves, and it becomes pretty hard for them because of the fact that you don't have a residency. But that's where the opportunity of doing, Twitch or any other online, platform can build your audience. Because if you play and you do this weekly and you start building your audience, you will start building a clientele that appreciates what you do. And not only that, you're also getting better at your art form if you're smart. You learn to better yourself, and you learn to, oh, let me try to do this mix a little different next time, or let me do this a little different. So you're going to become better. And as you become better, the audience that's listening to you will appreciate it. And if you're good enough and you're reaching up, you might reach somebody that says, you know what, let me check out this person online. They go check out your show that you did. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to give you a shot. You may have an opportunity to play. But in general, you have to have that built-in situation happening somewhere, whether it be online or whether it be in the club, because that's how not only do you get better, but you start building your reputation, you start having people appreciate what you do. If you don't have that, it's really hard to comprehend what it is that you're doing. Most people, to me, if what you do is something that, how can I say, as a hobby, that's a whole different thing. But if you're trying to do this as a career and something that you're going to make money at, you've got to be good at it. You've got to practice, and you've got to build an audience for it. And nowadays, not only us, but anybody that's in arts has to be a multi-hat person, which means you have to DJ, you have to produce, you have to be a promoter, you have to know a lot of things rather than just basically, in the old days, all I did was concentrate on music. That's all I had to concentrate. That's all DJs had to do was concentrate on music. Nowadays, you need a lot more hats than that.
Jersey has a very specific sound. Explain the Jersey sound and explain to people what is Jersey club music.
Jersey has always been very vocal oriented, and I think it's because of the gospel side of things. We're very gospel oriented here. So listening to good vocalists on music was something we've appreciated all the time. Jersey, to me, is different in New York, where New York's energy is more harder. It goes a little bit more harder. And vocals are okay for them, but that's not what drives them. Jersey, vocals drive it. If you have good vocals, they love the music that you're doing. It's very important for us in Jersey, vocally, the song to vocally be doing something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all soulful, because, we would get into, soft cell, CD films, things like that. What I mean? But still worked. It worked on a dance floor. It worked for the audience because the artist was doing it in a way that they can feel the emotion of the artist coming through in the music. So that's what Jersey has. I don't think, honestly, I don't know, maybe Chicago has it. I don't know, because I've never been to Chicago in all my life, but I know that Jersey has it. Very soulful vocals are a big prime part of what we do. And it's also the reason why, I don't know if you notice, like if you see Sets of Minds online, you'll see I still practice the old call and response of what the church used to do. Back in the days, the church would do, the reverend or the chorus would be singing something, and then the audience comes in and joins them, that call and response. That's actually what's a verse and a chorus in the song is. You know what I mean? You've got the verse sung by the lead person, and then the chorus, everybody's singing, you got a group doing it. And at the same time, it's the part you remember as a person, you sing along with that part. So I try to practice that on the dance floor. Like I'll play a song and, I'll try to get a response from them. I'll take down the music. Now it's your turn to sing. You know what I mean? And most of the time they do, because they know the songs and they know that call and response. When in New York, you don't see that a lot, but in Jersey, you will see that a lot.
Let's go back to Docs. Do you have a particular memory of a night or a performance where it was like, ooh, this is why I do this? Or it doesn't even have to be from the Docks era, just as a DJ overall.
Well, I mean, opening night at Zanzibar was one of those nights, obviously. You know what I mean? It's a night I won't forget, obviously.
What stood out for you for that night? What was like the magic for you?
I think it was not only was it the lights and the music being so synchronized, you know, that I had that light man doing the synchronization to what I was playing at the same time, but it was also the response of the audience to whatever I played. It was like they were on a heightened state. It wasn't just a simple, oh, we're just going to a club. No, they realized this club had a special meaning to it and a special aura to it altogether. So anything I played and whatever I played, they were just into it and screaming and hollering and appreciating it and coming along with it. And, you know, I played, like I said, at Docks and all this, and they would appreciate it. But to have a sea of people, because remember, you know, I'm playing in a club like Docks with 300, 450 people. It's a nice sized club. But when you look at Zanzibar, like 1,000 people, you know what I mean? It's a whole different feeling. But those kind of places, that kind of atmosphere is what makes me know that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I love it all the time, but those special moments are what make me go beyond it. Because I tell people all the time, there's times as a DJ that I would be like tired and I would be like, oh man, I gotta go DJ tonight. Because it's like every other job. You love it, but there's days that you're like, you know what, I just wish I could just take off tonight. And you can't, because as a DJ, you really couldn't do that. You didn't have replacement, the last minute replacement. You had to be there.
Yeah.
So that's what made me appreciate it. You know, I always played and I always believe that if I'm playing for 10 people or 10,000 people, they're both going to get the best that I can give them. I don't look at it and say, oh, it's a small crowd. No, because if those people, 10 people came out to hear me play, I appreciate the fact that they made the effort to come out to hear me play. So I'm going to give them my best. Now, if it's 10,000 people, I'm going to do the same thing. Appreciate it and give them my best. But it's never for me about, how can I put it? The numbers or anything like that. It's about the music and the quality of music that I can share with them.
I love that. So how long was your residency at Zanzibar?
Zanzibar, I was Zanzibar, I was there for 1.5 years.
Okay.
Like I say, 1.5 years before that, I was doing Abe. So in total, 3
Oh,
years.
wow.
Yeah, 3 years.
Okay.
Docks was, you know, almost
10 years.
10 years. I did 8 years. And what happened was, like, after that, I ended up going down the shore, the Jersey Shore, and I was doing all the clubs down there. So I had a residency down the shore, and I did that for a couple of years down there.
Oh, wow. How was it different playing on the shore versus in Jersey City? That must be like well, you tell us, what was that like?
Oh, it's crazy. That's one thing I guess I was lucky about, is that I used to, because I can play salsa and I can play, you know what I mean, soulful music. I sort of like was open to everything. So I can adapt. So when I played down the shore, you know, they wanted to hear, you know, the Madonnas and all this kind of stuff, but I can blend it in with, you know, the Dr. Loves, the Love is the Message and all that. And they appreciated it. So, you know, it was a whole different crowd, because we're talking about, you know, a white crowd, you know, 95% white, but.
Was it straight or gay?
They were straight down the shore. They were straight. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was also the fact that I can play for them, because as a DJ, I was able to do that. I can play, you know, whatever music I need to play it for that situation, I could. But I had to like it myself. I had to be, okay, fine, I can play this as long as I get to play what I like also. So I can do that. And I just so happened that, you know, I lucked out that they enjoyed what I did down there also. So I'm one of those very few jocks that has actually played for all different kind of audiences. You know, like we used to do all the Latin events in Newark. Like they would bring all the big Latin bands, La Voz, El Gran Combo, you know, Ray Barreto, Willie Colon, all these people. And we would be the DJs doing the music while they were the bands performing in the big events.
Wow, that must have been incredible.
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite times. Yeah,
I love El Gran Combo. I love them. I love them. Zanzibar and Docks were not the only clubs in Jersey. There was a scene happening there at the same time, probably sparked by Docks. Tell us about the other Jersey clubs that were popping at that time, and describe the club scene in Jersey at that time in the 70s.
There was actually quite a few clubs working in Jersey. We had Shanique's, which was around for a long time in downtown Newark, and their setup was there was like an apartment, and it had like different rooms running down the whole thing, and then towards the other end of the throughway, because you had seating areas everywhere pretty much. They had the dance floor and they had the DJ booth in there, and they had that, and that was popping for a long time. We had New Sensations. That was on Branford Place, and that was more of another club that was also open and popping. We had Docs, we had Abe's, all of these. Then later on, a bunch of other clubs came. Black Box came, Coffee Cave, all these other places came later on. But during that era, we had plenty of little places and clubs that were open. Murphy, there was a bar that was open. There was a lot of places open that people can go and party. The only thing, like I said, the only difference between them and us was the fact that we had that distinct crowd that was there to dance. Like we had the actual dance crowd. Everybody wanted, because when you have the dancers actually in your club, you're doing something right, because dancers will come out and they will spread the word to other dancers. And we just lucked out in that. But all those places had crowd. Everybody everywhere had crowd. Abe's had a crowd. Shanique's had a crowd. All those places. Paradiso opened up when Zanzibar opened up. They had a crowd. So Jersey always seemed, was a party, definitely a partying town. It was definitely a partying town, and people appreciated it. And today, even today, I think Jersey is more house heads. Newark especially is more house heads than most other places that supposedly are house. Including
1000%.
New York, including Chicago. I don't care what other places. You go down the streets of Jersey and you listen to a car passing by, a young person, you hear the music blasting out, it's house music. It's not hip hop, none of that stuff. It's house music. It's still one of the prime ingredients in the core of Newark.
So you're at Zanzibar, you play there for a year and a half, and then where do you go next, or what happens?
So next, I'm back I went back to Docs. I was still doing Docs. I started going back because I had to leave Docs because Mal didn't want me to do it. Just like Larry, they didn't want me to play anywhere else. So I was strictly Zanzibar for that year and a half. That's all I did.
Got it.
I left Zanzibar, I went back to Docs. I was doing Docs, and then I was doing Docs for, like I said, about a year and a half before I got the call from a friend of mine. Mike Knight was working down the shore. So he was working at a club, Blue Grotto, down the shore. So he decided, hey, he knew me from Zanzibar and everything. And he told the owner, he said, I got this guy, man. He's a really good DJ. You need to, I need to bring him down so you can hear him. So he brought me down and I DJ'd, and Jerry Rotonda was the manager and stuff. And he liked me. So we got along. So I ended up working for him. After we did that, we did Temptations, and then Temptations, I went to a club called Hollywood, and then Jerry opened up a club called Panache, and I spent my first year there at Panache. The whole year they opened, the opening night, I was the DJ and stuff.
This was in Jersey still?
That was in Jersey also, yeah. Yeah, and they were all down the shore, down Seaside Heights. These were all Seaside Heights clubs. Yeah, that was before the crazy Jersey Shore that you see on MTV. It was nothing like that.
Oh, that's what I'm confused by, because I'm like, I don't see that crowd going for this music.
No, it was completely different, right? It was a completely different crowd. Yeah.
That's what's messing me up. I'm like, I just don't see. Yeah.
No, we're talking about 84, around that era. Okay. That's when I went down the shore. That was years before the Jersey Shore Club is what you see on the TV. It was never like that. And in fact, nobody in the Jersey Shore, down the shore from that, they hate that show. They don't like anything about it because it has nothing to do how it used to be on the shore at all.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, they hate it. They hate that show.
Wow. Let's see. I have more questions here. Why did you leave Zanzibar?
Well, I was let go. What happened was Al Murphy he tried to do it at Docs too, but what happened was Butchie, my partner, he said no, because when Al Murphy comes in, he used to love working with Larry Patterson. Larry Patterson was his DJ that he had La Jocks. And he used to like to have the gay DJs for himself, do his clubs. So he after a while, like Gerald T says the same thing. he started wanting to move, having more gay DJs in the club. So after the year and a half, it was just got to the point where me and him were like, always almost sort of battling, you know what I mean? Because that's what he wanted. So then finally Miles said, well, I got to let you go because he's doing these things here and he doesn't want it. And I said, no problem. I'll do what I got to do. You do what you got to do. That's all. That was it. And, that's how we started. That's how we were able to bring in, like Larry Patterson, T. Scott, all these guys that he wanted. You know what I mean?
How did that make you feel though? After like you set everything up and then like.
It's like, I really don't sweat it because, you'd be surprised how many clubs I've been either fired from or I quit or whatever. And to me, it was sort of like transition things. That's it. You know what I mean? I'm working. This is what I do. You know what I mean? If it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, I opened up 88, which was, the other club they had, the upstairs.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the 88, 88 used to be just a downstairs, just like Abe's. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same owners, same owner of the burgers. So when they wanted to open up the second floor at 88, I was already let go from Zanzibar, but Bruce, Miles' brother, Miles Burger was the one that ran Zanzibar. That was his baby. 88 was Bruce's baby. Mm-hmm. So Bruce said, well, no, I'm bringing Hippie in to open up my club. You know what I mean? So he brought me in, and nobody at 88 wanted me there because, they were all used to all the DJs they had and everything. Here comes this guy and they're bringing him, like, why are you bringing him in? We don't need him to, you know what I mean? Like I said, to me, it was just work, you know what I mean? I did. I was only there like 3 months. Okay. But I opened up the club for him. That's what he wanted. And I opened up the club. Definitely. And like I said, I've worked in so many places and been through so many stuff that I was used to it. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to I'll find another spot, you know what I mean, to be able to DJ in. No big deal.
Wow. But then before you left, though, you're the one that brought in Larry Levan, though, right?
Well, I'm the one that brought in Al Murphy. I kept telling Miles.
Right. You brought in Al Murphy.
Al Murphy wanted to bring in Larry Levan. Yeah, exactly.
So then
the thing about it was when I didn't mind guest jocks. So I would do events with other places and have other guest jocks come in and do, guest nights for me at the club. I had no problem with that,
Mm-hmm. So when did Tony Humphries get involved then?
He came in, I think I was gone by the time he came in because what happened was what's his name? The guy that did it? Shep Pettibone. Shep Pettibone used to do 98 Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
He gave it to Tony. He said, I'm going to bring you in to do because he began to do all his mixes, so he didn't have time to do the radio show. Mm-hmm. So he brought Tony in, Tony to do it. And then what happened was Shep and Larry Patterson, because Larry Patterson was already at Zanzibar because of Al Murphy. He said, listen, we're going to bring to Jersey to a club. You know what I mean? That's like the garage of Jersey. And Tony was like, garage of Jersey? What are you talking about? Ain't no place like the garage. So what happened is they brought him in and he went and he was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. I need to play here. So he begged Larry Patterson. He said, listen, if you don't let me play in this club, I'm never coming back. I need to play in this club. And that's how Tony came in. And finally, they gave him a chance. Now, Tony's story is hilarious because we used to have Thorn turntables, right? Because originally we had the 1200s at when we first opened Zanzibar, because we were going to have the Thorns, but then for some reason in the last minute, Richard Long decided, no, we're going to switch them out for 1200s. So I was used to either way. So I can play on both because I used to play at the Limelight in New York used to have the Thorn turntable. So I was used to playing on them. So I had no problem. So we started with the 1200s. And then when they brought Larry in 3 months later, he wanted the Thorns. So we switched out the 1200s for the Thorns. So I got used to the Thorns, and that's what I used to play with at Zanzibar. But Tony Humphries never played on Thorns. So the first time he got to play at the club, he sounded so bad. He said the people were looking at him and he was looking at himself like, what is going on? They did not feel him at all. Because he never played on Thorns. So he didn't have the knowledge of how to work a Thorn turntable. So then he got smart about it, and he begged Larry Patterson. He said, no, you got to give me a second chance. I am not this bad. I'm telling you, I am not this bad. So they gave him another chance, and then he played it smart. He He didn't not try to go make these amazing mixes. Instead, he would mix them with stuff that would work. You know what I mean? Stuff that he can actually work and blend together pretty easily. So he got used to the throwing and he got better. And then they accepted him and stuff. But like I said, the first time he sounded as bad as I sounded when I played the first time, like I said, at the roller skating ring. Nobody, that was horrible. That was the same way. So I knew the story.
Wow. How important, talk to people about the importance of Zanzibar to the Jersey club scene.
Yeah, the New Jersey club is to us what the garage is to the New York club heads. You know what I mean? It's one of the, if it was at the time the most iconic club in Jersey, and it's still remembered as one of the best clubs that has ever been in Jersey, ever. Just like the Rogers remember New York, Zanzibar is remembered in Jersey for the same thing. And Zanzibar was also where the transition from house happened, because Tony jumped onto house really early on. Now, there's a debate as to when house started, but I can't argue with that because, you know, Chicago came up with the name. But I don't understand what they consider house, because from their definition of what house is, you know, it was music that, you know, these young kids were doing, you know, with equipment in their house. And you know what I mean? They weren't signed to big labels or anything, and they were bringing them to the clubs. And, you know, Frankie Knuckles was playing these. But we were doing that in New York way before that with Boy Jarvis. You know, he was working on stuff in his house, and he would bring reel to reels to Larry, and then we would pass it on to us, and we would have copies, and we were playing reel to reels with Boy Jarvis stuff, you know what I mean, before it became anything. So he did the same thing. He had, you know, drum machine, keyboards, he put a little track together and stuff like that. And, you know, if you look at from that angle, Timmy Regisford worked with him on it, and then Tony Humphries did the mix on it. You know what I mean, on that first record. So that's our idea of where, you know, the New York scene of house came from that era. But, you know, Chicago named it. So Tony was on it from the very beginning. So he was one of the first, if not the first, in the New York area playing house music. You know, he started playing house music, and he broke it at Zanzibar. He was playing all this stuff, and people. And what happened was, the moment he started playing, because I used to go up to Jersey, because I was living down the shore, working down the shore. So I would go up to Jersey, you know, to check out what's happening, check out the scene, check out 20 what's 20. So then I go into the club, and then he's playing this record, you know what I mean? And I think it was Music at the Key or something like that. And I'm like, what's going on? What is this? And Naeem was hanging out with me. He told me, oh, this is the song. It's called House Music and blah, blah, blah. So I went and I brought all the house music, and I brought them down the shore. So I brought the house music down the shore because they'd never heard of down there either. You know what I mean? So, but and Tony, without a doubt, and Zanzibar was where house was broken in New Jersey.
Wow. Talk about the crowd at Zanzibar.
When we first opened, when we first opened, opening night, people came, you know, some came dressed, others came casual, you know what I mean? It wasn't until we started the Wednesday nights that Al Murphy started Wednesday night, people that came really casual, you know, they would wear jeans and sneakers and, you know, come to work out, you know, pretty much on the dance floor. On the weekend, we had more people coming, you know, some of them would dress up, and they came and they would stay on the dance floor, but that was it. They weren't working out like the real dancers, you know, that they'll go out, they'll find their spot on the floor and they'll really work out. They were more like keeping the floor consistent, just like the Paradise Garage in New York. It was, if you looked on the floor, it was an ocean of people just dancing. You know what I mean? Everybody's just dancing together. That's the way Zanzibar, that's the way it was. But like I said, they were a little more dressed up. Then later on, it became a little more casual as we started the Wednesday nights. And then after I left, they really got casual, and it was like, you know, everybody can come, you know, jeans, sneakers, whatever you wanted. At first, they didn't let you come in you know, with the sneakers. They didn't want the sneakers in there. But the crowd was always, you know, they always went to party. They had a good time. You know, they appreciated it. You know, it was a nice crowd. It was a nice crowd. It was a really nice crowd. But it was mostly straight. It wasn't, you know, the gay nights they had. It was a little mixture, but I would say it was about 80% straight and about 20% gay.
And then talk to us about the connection between Club Zanzibar and the LGBTQ community.
Well, like I said, Al Murphy started the Wednesday night as the gay night, and that's what trend started there. We had done it before, like I said, our gay night at Doc's, and Al Murphy had done the same thing at Shanique's. When he used to do Shanique's, he had his club. That was also a gay night also. But one thing about Jersey back then, I don't know about anywhere else, we did not see the gay community as an out community. Like, in other words, they were part of the whole system. So it wasn't like you went to a club and there was a gay person, you felt like a distant or felt, no, they were there for the same reason, the party, to have a good time. And we never had problems. We never had any kind of, homophobia, none of that. And, people went to the club, they went to dance, and, they went and everybody got along. Like I said, I really, I guess it's that love from the late 60s, that hippie kind of love thing just kept through in the 70s. And once, became disco, anybody would go to a club. They went to party and to have a good time. And, they have the same thing happen in New York. It's like most of the time, the people that went to dance, regardless of whether they were straight or not, knew that the best crowds were the gay clubs. So they would go and seek out gay clubs because they knew the music would be good, the party would be good. It's just the way it was. And there wasn't issues back then. I think we have more issues now than we had back then, honestly.
I totally agree. All right, so you leave Zanzibar, you're playing on the Jersey Shore. What happens next?
And then from the Jersey Shore, I was doing a club called Panache. Jerry Rotondo opened up a club. I opened up the club.
Jersey also?
That was in Jersey. Yeah, Panache was in Jersey, down the Jersey Shore. That was the Jersey Shore. Jerry Rotondo was like the man at the Jersey Shore. He opened up most of the major clubs there that were making noise. So then what happened was, when I came back up north, I'll tell you the story what happened at Temptations. So Jerry had a club called Temptations. So Temptations was like the club. It was like the happening club. So what happens is the owner of the place, because Jerry's the manager and he's probably like a small percentage owner, the owner of the place decides to sell it out from under Jerry. So we come in one weekend to go, we're ready to set up and everything. The next thing you know, there's like these 4 big guys, like mafioso looking guys come in, they cover the floor. And then Eugene was the guy that the partner that had brought the club with the other people. He comes and he says, the club is now ours. I need everybody to come into the office and speak to me. So we will see whether or not you're going to be working here. Just like that. We were all like, everybody, the bartenders, everybody was like, what happened? Where's Jerry? You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to figure out what's going on. So Eugene comes in and, he's trying to talk to everybody to keep them calm and say, yeah, well, we want to continue doing this. Nobody's going to lose their job. We're going to do it. So when it comes to my turn, I was really cocky at the time because I was young and dumb, right? So I go up to the office with him and I tell him, listen, this is the deal. I get paid X amount of dollars and this is what you got to pay me and that's it. And he goes, whoa. He goes, wow, this kid is coming in here, guns are blazing. He goes, well, listen, I give you that tonight, but I can't give you that all the time, but let's see what happens. So by the end of the night I play, he goes, listen, I can't afford what you want, but I really want you to DJ here. I said, no, I'm sorry. I get paid what I get paid. And I just left the club. I just left there. And what happened was I was living down the shore. So Mike Canacho was the sound guy that did all the clubs down the Jersey Shore, an excellent sound guy. So I just told him, listen, Mike, I'm open, to do anything. So, and this is another part of the story that's kind of weird. When I used to work at Temptations down there, I was the highest paid jock at the time. So all the other jocks in the area was like, who's this guy? Why is he getting paid so much? So we used to go to the diners afterwards, after the clubs to go eat. So we went to this diner and it just so happened that behind the booth behind me is the DJ from the other club, Hollywood, the club Hollywood. And he's talking to his girlfriend. He says, I don't know who this guy Hippie is, why they got to pay him so much, blah, blah, blah. So it just happened that we're hearing this and we're eating, and my light man is with me. Wilson is with me. So Wilson decides to be crazy about it. So he gets up and he says, hey, how you doing? What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I just wanted to tell you my name is Hippie. And the guy turned colors. You know what I mean? Like, the guy, they're going, oh my God, I've heard so much good stuff about you and everything. You know what I mean? And I got up and I said, no, he's lying. My name is Hippie. Okay. He's just my lineman. He's messing with you. And he goes, oh no, it's all right. But what happened was he was the club DJ at Hollywood. So what happened was once I let go, I walked out of Temptation. I told Mike, hey, Mike, I'm open to work anywhere. And if anything, tell Hollywood, the club, I'm willing to work there if they pay me this much. So I was the DJ back then at that time. So what happened was I ended up taking that guy's job that was talking about me. I ended up being the DJ at Club Hollywood. They took me and they said, oh yeah, we're definitely going to take him.
Wow. Wow. What a funny story.
It
What
was
a funny
crazy.
story. Wow. Wow.
But then I ended up, after I left there, I ended up working for Eugene, the guy that brought Temptations, because he had a club up north called Chicago's. So I ended up working at Chicago's, and in the summertime, I would go work down Temptations for him. And then in the winter, back up to Chicago's. So I did that. And I was there for a couple of years. And what happened was, as I started bringing them house music, the bounces and all the people there, they didn't want it. They were like, oh no, we don't want this kind of music. We don't like it. Okay. And they were trying, they really didn't want it. They wanted to hear the freestyle and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, listen, this is the music that's going to be happening. You know what I mean? You need to get into this. It's really the music that's going to be happening. So I kept playing it. So then, but they wanted to, me and Eugene had a talk. So I went to his office right the day he was going to get rid of me. And we had a conversation. He said, listen, man, this club is like a McDonald's. Everybody comes here because they want the same burger every week. And I told him, well, listen, I'm like an artist, and what you want me to do is paint by numbers. I can't do that. Okay. And because I can't do that, that means we can't work together. So then that's how I let go of that. I got out of there and stuff. But that's the conversation we had. You know what I mean? And I don't blame him. He's a club owner. He wants to make money. He has a certain kind of crowd that are looking for a certain kind of music. But I'm trying to be artistic and be on the other end and bring in new music and turn them on to new stuff. So
how difficult is it to maintain a career in nightlife and also maintain a relationship in a personal life? Like, are partners understanding that you're out in the club all night, or they suspect like, oh, you out there in the streets?
Right. Well, the good thing about me is that I don't really go to clubs unless I'm working. So I didn't really go and hang out per se. When I was young, I did. When I was young, sure. When I was in my teens, 17, 16, 18, I was constantly in all the clubs in New York City. But once I started working as a DJ, on my days off, I was not going to a club to hang out. I basically was, at home. But it was difficult because when you work in a club and you have a certain persona, you get a lot of opportunities to misbehave. You know what I mean? So it was hard on that end. It was really difficult. When I was young, I was like a major asshole. Okay. I had girlfriends, but I would still be seeing other women. It's just the way it was. That's a reality. Later on in life, obviously, I learned. But because of that, it was like, it's like drug, sex, and rock and roll. You know what I mean? I mean, women would be willing to do anything. You know what I mean? So it was like, I was young. It was like, come on, am I going to get this chance when I'm in my 40s and 50s? This is only going to happen once. So there was no level to what I would not or could not do. But I also was a person that didn't do drugs. So I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. I was always straight. So I was always conscious of what I was doing. You know what I mean? And, eventually I learned my own lesson and said, you know what, I can't be doing this, basically. And that was it.
How did you manage to stay sober when most people at that era, like partying was a way of life?
I think it was because since I was young, I've always been, I've always wanted to be different. When I started, when we moved to Newark, not to Newark, to Jersey City, my parents, this was a thing that a lot of people did back then, but my parents said, okay, you've got to learn something other than just going to school. So we're going to make you take piano lessons. So I took piano lessons for like 3 years, from the age of 7 to the age of 10, I was taking piano lessons. But I was also into other things, like magic was a hobby of mine. When I was 12, 13, I used to hypnotize my friends. I was a sort of kind of kid that was very into esoteric stuff or different music or different things happening. Like I didn't see myself as being a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. I always saw myself as doing something, are either entertaining or in something in that field. So because of that, I also realized that because everybody that I grew up with and hung out with, they all got high. So I was like, how am I going to stand out from these folks? Basically, pretty much. I'm not going to do drugs. I'm going to be completely from what they're doing. So I always, they knew me. They were like, that's it. He hangs out with us, but he doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't get high. He doesn't do any of that stuff. And it's sort of like it became a alma mater for me to later on, I realized and said, you know what, if I really get good at anything in life, I want to be able to show the other little kids that see me up or look up to me and say to me, you know what, he got there, but he didn't have to do drugs. He didn't have to get high. He didn't have to do anything. And he still made it. I wanted to be that example for them.
That's awesome. One more macro question about Jersey. What does Jersey bring to the table that's different from New York?
Well, I always, when New York talks about the club scene, they do have a club scene, but they don't seem to remember, or maybe they just don't want to, that a good percentage of that audience came from Jersey. Jersey is a party in town. Jersey is the kind of place that people who go out to party, and they used to go to the garage, and they used to go to Better Days, and they used to go to the gallery or any other places. They were an audience that would go out to do it. New York is not like that. They wouldn't come up to Jersey, you know what I mean, or go to other places. Most of the time, they were strictly in New York City. They stayed in their city. But Jersey was the kind of town that went and looked for clubs and looked for party. So we were like a partying place. It was like, we would find places to go almost every day of the week. We had somewhere to go. Whether it be in Jersey or be in New York. Jersey, like I said, and it's also the fact that we enjoy good vocal, good gospel, good club music. We enjoyed all of it from 90 BPMs all the way up to, 130 BPM. Whereas New York liked it more harder. They liked it. They seem to always be a little more hard edge, not as much as techno of Detroit, but up there in that range sometimes. You know what I mean? They used to like the music harder, less vocally, more dubby. That's their thing. Jersey is still more vocal oriented.
I love that. I love that. You also played overseas. What was that like?
The first time I played overseas was an event with Pete Tong, because I had a song called "You're Gonna Miss Me." I did a song called "You're Gonna Miss Me," and it didn't do anything here, but it was a huge hit in in England, France, Germany, Spain, all over there. So because of that song, Dave Lee, Joey Negro wanted to sign me. So he signed me to his label, Republic. So we signed to the label, and then the song was coming out. And then so I was doing a mini tour of all of Europe. So that first tour I did, the first event was with Pete Tong at a place, I forgot the name of the place, but they would do this place. And the lines, I mean, I thought the lines in Zanzibar were long. The lines in this place went around the block. I mean, it was so long. I was just, and I'm coming in, I'm freaking out. I'm like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. And the thing about it is, what we had lost in Jersey and New York City as far as partying atmosphere, they had picked up on. So when you went to a club in England at the time, like early 90s, they were into it. They were like partying. Everybody was dancing the way we used to be. We used to be dancing and everything. And then later on, it got everybody wanted to get picked up or drink or whatever. But they were in that atmosphere. It was a perfect time to be there. It was amazing. I went there. I went to Germany. I went to Spain. It was amazing. I mean, the audiences really loved it. One of the most important audiences for me was Japan, because when you played in Japan, one thing about them, they knew everything about the songs you would play. They knew the producers. They knew the artists that were playing on the records. They knew where it was recorded, what studio. They knew who the background singers, everybody. I mean, they went into detail, and they were like that for everything. It was amazing.
Wow. And then how long did you tour Europe?
Well, I would say about till I left Jersey, till 2003. So I started touring Europe and England and everything, and then I moved from there to Florida, and I was still doing tours. And when I lived in South Carolina, I was doing tours also, because I went up there and I did Dubai and I did Spain. I still did a couple of places up there. So I would say Pre-COVID, I was still doing, touring every once in a while.
Yeah.
After COVID, since that time, I haven't done anything. I haven't really gone anywhere or done anything. The only events I will do is that I'll go up to Jersey or do an event, or I might go down to, Florida or to Atlanta, whatever. I would do those kind of events. But right now, I haven't done anything, but we're setting it up because actually the song that I did, You're Gonna Miss Me, just got signed to Defected. So they're doing new mixes and they're going to put them out in June. So we're trying to set up a tour and everything so I can do Europe again. Once the song drops, I can start doing some clubs in Europe and stuff like that.
At what point did you leave DJing and then take a straight job?
I used to finagle doing jobs, but not for a long time. While I was DJing and working at the Chicago club, I started managing a theater in Secaucus, the Lowe's Theaters. I was assistant manager there. I did that for about 6 months. And then it was always still, I still did music and everything. Then I left that. Then it wasn't until I would say 95, 96, I started working for MSNBC. So I used to do audio for them. I used to be, I was the audio A2 on the floor. So I worked with all the talents, you know what I mean? Lester Holt, all those people they had there, I would mic them. I would put their earpieces in. I worked that. That's what I did. I was, like I said, because of the technical side of me of doing audio and stuff like that, I've always been lucky to be able to find those kind of jobs. And I also worked, and like I said, I used to do that while I still DJ, because what happened was they knew what I did. So they would allow me to do whatever I wanted. So they would give me a schedule and I would work it out, what I'm going to do. And if I was doing events or something, or I would have to travel overseas, then no problem. Just let me know. You can just schedule it and not to do. So I was lucky that they were flexible enough to let me do what I wanted to and still work for them and do that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about production. What's your approach to producing a record?
To me, it always, I try not to, but it always starts with the rhythm. You've got to find the right groove that works regardless of whether you have keyboards or anything. If you get the right groove happening, then from there you can go on to try and find some nice chord progressions, find something nice. And then from there, build the vocals. You know what I mean? You want to have a nice message, nice harmonies, nice, a message, set up so you can have a nice chorus and verse and a bridge if you want to, all that kind of stuff. But before that, what I used to do is I always started with piano, because I always used to say, especially if it's a real song, if it's a club song, you need to start with the drum. But if what you're trying to do is write a real song, you should be able to do it with just piano, playing keyboards, and the vocals. If you make the song and it works in that state, like what they call acoustic state, pretty much, the song will work in any state you put it into. It's the reason why in the old days, if you listen to a lot of the songs in the old days, when you had a hit record that made it and was a good record, you would hear a reggae band doing a version of it. You would hear a jazz band doing a version of it, because the song worked. It didn't matter what format you put it in. The song in and of itself worked.
How do you know when the song is done?
A song, if most producers are like me, a song is never done. What you do is you reach a point where you say, okay, I've got to finish and put this out. But it's never done, because when you listen to your production, you always hear a little, something you could tweak here, something you could tweak there, something that sounded good today doesn't sound good tomorrow. It all depends, because everything changes. Your hearing changes, you know what I mean? Your mental state changes every day. So, a song is never done for a real musician. They always can touch it and tweak it and do whatever they want to. But you set goals and you set times for yourself, and you say, okay, I've got to be done by so-and-so date. So let's get it done by that day. So whatever you finish, you get as close as possible to what it is you want, and then you release it. Because if you don't, you have to have, my friend Mark Mendoza used to be my partner, Mentor Productions. Mm-hmm. He had all the time in the world, because all music is all he did. So when he used to do one song, it would take him sometimes 6 months to a year for one song. Because he was always tweaking it, and he always found something to change and something to make different. You know what I mean? You got to have that. But I'm the type of person that, once we started making noise, record companies were like, okay, here's the song. We need a mix done within a week or two, the most. So you have to finish it. You have to go and say, all right, let's start working on this. Let's put it together. Is it working? Oh yeah, it sounds like it's working pretty good. All right, let's keep going. And then once you get to that deadline, okay, that's it. We got to turn it in tomorrow. So let's finish it off, master it, and put it in. You can always tweak it if you wanted to, but you got to meet those deadlines. You got to read. The reality is you got to meet your deadlines if you're working something like that, or if you want to be able to make a living for it. You can't live on one single year. It just doesn't make sense. Right now, the labels that are living and making a living, like, Quantize and all them, it's because they're putting out 3 and 4 songs a week. You know what I mean? And the record labels used to do the same thing. They didn't put out, 1 song a year. They would constantly be putting songs out every week. You know what I mean? You would have something different to pick from. If you really want to live off of that's the way you got to do things. You can't do things like once a year. It doesn't work for that.
Looking back, how would you approach your DJ career differently? Knowing what you know now.
That's a hard one because I thought I had a pretty good, let's put it this way, I felt very lucky in my career. By the time I was 20, I opened up opening night. I wasn't even 21 at Zanzibar opening night. So you can imagine at the age of 20, opening up one of the biggest clubs, in your lifetime, So I've been very lucky. I've won awards, the Billboard Award. I've gotten to travel the world. There's not much I would change. The only thing I would probably change is to try and, it wouldn't be my DJing, because I feel like I really put a lot of effort and time into my DJing. One thing I really do is I put in the work. And the thing, it doesn't go unnoticed, because when I started tagging my records and putting them in keys and all that, nobody was doing that. Nobody. I would do that. And, when I travel, everybody knew, oh, that guy's he's got his record tagged in keys and the BPMs and all that. And then, and my mixing, I even did it before I started DJ with mixing and key. I was already doing that in the 70s because I played piano. So I knew the keys and the chords to songs. So I knew that this song would blend with this song because they're both in the key of C minor or whatever. So my blending was always musically harmonic. You know what I mean? I always try to make it better than, than just a simple mix. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't change that. What I would change is probably my production and remix and all that kind of stuff. I would probably do more of that. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I could have more of that out. I just, because my passion is DJing, I spend more time making sure my DJing levels are up and making sure everything I do DJ wise is up to par of stuff. And the thing I work the most on now, believe it or not, is my acapellas. Because a couple of years ago, I was working on some software for acapellas and stuff like that. So I was always trying to find the perfect way to make a perfect sounding acapella. So now I got it to a point where, I honestly think my acapellas that I pull from regular stereo songs is better than most people, including all the software that's out there trying to separate the songs and like that. They don't get it as clean as I do.
How do you do it? What's your secret?
Well, I do tell people one of the tools I use. I don't need to sponsor this company, but there's a software called RipX, and it's really an excellent package for it. I mean, it lets you separate the tracks, and then it lets you go in and clean up if you hear any background noise or if you hear a trumpet leaking through the vocal, you can take it out. You can do all kinds of things. It's a really excellent software that I use and stuff. That's one of the tools I use, and I use techniques that I've actually worked out from doing this so many years, that I've worked out my own way of how to clean them up, They sound really clean, If I played you a couple of tracks right now that I got an acapella, you'd be like, wait a minute, what is that? Is that from the actual multi-track? I said, nope, I pulled that from the stereo track of the record.
Wow. Wow. Well, what advice would you give to the next generation?
Like I said, you have to be multi-hatted now. You can't just DJ. DJing is a great thing, and you must work on your craft. But you got to be able to promote. You've got to be able to do production. You know what I mean? Even if it's not a lot, at least try to get constant production, at least monthly, something monthly to put out. You need to look at, getting a good, eventually, if you start making some noise, you need a good manager. A good manager will look out for you and make sure that not only are you getting paid properly, but make sure you're able to reach your point, making sure you're being picked up at the airport or whatever place you're going to, make sure the paperwork is in place to make sure you can go to that country and work without them telling you, oh, no, you don't have working papers here, so you can't do this. All that is handled by a
Has that
good
ever happened to you?
not to me, but it happened to Kerry Chandler, it happened to Ted Patterson. I was at the airport with them. And because whoever hired them to do the job didn't give them working papers, they ended up at the airport putting them back on a plane and sending them back to the States. So, you've got to have all that handled. You've got to be able to have it right. You can't just, think that, because you do this, that they're not going to know who you are. DJs are very recognizable and, they're high profile now, so most countries know if somebody comes in, and they got a DJ name, they're going to recognize them as a DJ. They're going to be like, what are you doing here? If you're coming here to work, where's your working papers, all that stuff. Not only that, you also need to, make sure you can transition from, I used to be, when I used to travel, sometimes it's like, you only have 20 minutes to get from first gate that you're at to the very next gate. And back then I used to have to travel with all my records, my luggage, everything I had, and try to run through the airport to try to make the next gate. Okay, it's crazy when those kind of things happen, and you got to keep all that in mind. I always tell people, one other thing that people learn through traveling is when I go anywhere and I'm going and they always want to take you to dinner, I never try what they want because they want me to try all the local food. Please, you've got to try this. This is a delicate plate of our. No, I'm traveling. So if I go and I try a plate that I've never tried, and it ends up hitting me bad in my stomach, I'm going to end up probably not being able to do the gig or doing a really bad gig because I'm feeling horrible. So I always stick to, nope, just give me a nice fried chicken or whatever, or let's go to McDonald's or something like that I know and I can eat it and I'm not going to upset my stomach. People got to take all those things into consideration because, you're performing. So if your stomach gets messed up, you're not going to be able to perform. But you only learn this from traveling and doing this and realizing, these are all things you have to be able to do. You come with backup USB sticks just in case one USB stick doesn't work. You have to have another one. I have backup headphones just in case one headphone breaks or anything happens. You have another one as backup. All this stuff you have to constantly be doing when you're traveling as a DJ or doing any kind of event anywhere.
That's really, really, really good advice. Describe the current state of house music.
I like the fact that it's actually getting back to being an underground almost kind of thing. US radio is not playing house, obviously, or anything like that. But there's so many good songs out there that DJs that do gigs or play at clubs have a lot of good music to be able to play to the audience. And it's getting back to what it was. When the disco era was around, you went to a club because what you heard was something that wasn't being played on the radio. Okay, so that's the reason why you went to the club. And if you find a club that played music that you were like, wow, I don't hear this anywhere else, you're going to be back at the club. That's going to be your club, that because you appreciate the music. It's getting back to that. I think a lot of good music is out, but you don't hear it anywhere else unless you go to a house party somewhere or to a certain jock that that plays that kind of music. So I think it's good for us. I think the state we're going and we're getting much closer to what it was originally when we had the original underground clubs in the 70s.
How do you discover new music?
Like I said, I get like over 100, and I still get a lot of records sent to me. You know what I mean? I've been doing this so long and I get a lot of record labels send me music, you know what I mean? Producers, artists, all kinds of stuff. And I'll go through it every week. Religiously, I will go through the music and listen to every piece, whether it's good or bad, whatever it is, I listen to everything and I'll pick what's good and I will play it on my show because I have a show I do every Tuesday on Cyber Jams. So I will play only the best stuff that I picked from that week. That's what I will play on my show. That's it.
Wow. And how do you organize your records?
Oh, I do. I put in the work. I get the key for them. I get the BPMs. I organize them. My songs, if you were to look at my songs, they were organized not only by BPM. So they start at the slowest BPM at the top, working with the fastest way, but they're also in key. So they'll start at A, work their one down to B, C, D, E, F, G, which is the last. So I will work in the category. So I may have 3 songs that are 120, and one might be A, one might be a D, one may be E. Those will be the first 3 songs. And then the next one is 121, the speed. And then whatever songs I got that are arranged in order there. So I do that. A lot of cats don't do that. So I tag them. I make sure everything's in key, everything's right. And then on top of it, like I said, I try to find every week, I'll find acapellas, like classic acapellas that I can pull out of songs, and I will clean them up and get rid of all the dirt. And it usually takes me 4 to 6 hours just to do one acapella. That's just to do an acapella. Okay.
Wow.
But once the end of that is clear and it's clean, and I've got my new music I'm playing, I can play the new music. And if I find a spot on there that has a nice instrumental section that I can loop or something, I'll loop it. And then I'll throw an acapella that's in key to what is happening there. And people are like, oh man, what's going on here? This is really nice. I'm liking this groove, because the music is new, but some of the acapellas I throw on are classics. So I'm reaching both audiences. I realized that at this point, you know, you have a crowd that wants to hear the classics. There's still a crowd that goes to house events that wants to hear classics. And then you have a crowd that wants to hear just new stuff. So my game is, okay, well, I'll play the new stuff, and then every once in a while, if I find a spot where I got a nice instrumental, I'll throw a classic underneath it. So you're still listening to new stuff, but you're hearing, reminiscing with the lyrics from the old song, and it really works. It works really well for people who, oh man, I love that. It's working really nice. I love that. So they're both audiences, the new and the classic audience are being, how do you call it? Both of them are being pleased at the same time.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I just want people to say, you know what, he did what he did and he was really good at it. Like, he really put the effort in to do what he did. And he also tried to be a good example for others. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see my record and, you know, oh, this guy had this or that. No, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty clean. But I also want people to know, you know, you can do this. And if you do it right, you can have a long career. Because this year makes 50 years of me DJing.
Wow.
This year. So that's a long time to do something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And still love it. And I still love it like I do. Like I said, I still put in the hours, you know, every week to listen to music and to do these acapellas and to do this stuff. And every once in a while, I'll even do the production, you know what I mean? But a lot of it just takes up just me giving back to the community. So the show I do on Tuesday, the Cyber Jam, is from 10 to 12 in the afternoon, 2 hours. But that's my way of giving back to the house community. That's my way of saying, you know what? I appreciate what I do. I appreciate the fact that you support me when I go out. So I do this every week to let you know what's new music-wise and what's out there, and also maybe hopefully entertain you while you're listening to it.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that would help people better understand Hippie Torrales or Jersey?
No, I honestly, the only thing I would tell people is that Jersey is extremely, besides being house, it's if you get in the atmosphere and you meet the people, they're really friendly. The audience is extremely friendly. They'll accept anybody. They'll bring you in. They want you to party with them. They want you to have a good time. So if you ever go to Jersey, you go to Newark to any of the events, I guarantee you will have a good time. I guarantee you the audience will appreciate you being there, and you appreciate them, because you're both going to be doing the same thing, trying to enjoy a moment and an experience from whoever is sharing it with you at that time, whatever DJ is sharing it with you.
Perfect. This was great. Thank you so much. This was a fantastic interview. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.